let me first start off by, can everyone hear me okay back there? Awesome, good. So I'm not much of a podium guy. I like to kind of come out and interact with people directly. So let me first start off by giving you my professional history, just so that you know where I'm coming from. I have been at the wine library for about 5 years now. I've been in the industry for about 17, principally as a buyer. So finding product, selling product, pretty straightforward. I've also done a lot of research, a fair amount of writing in the business on different aspects of the market. And I'm also involved in a number of other marketing trends and analyses that are actually pretty exciting, especially at this point in the game. That's my professional background. My personal shtick, if you will, is I've been called a number of things. I've been called somewhat of a hot mess at times. I've been called professionally irreverent, and my slides that are coming up, you'll see that. My good friend Brant Kriak, who's in the audience today, has basically acknowledged me as the greatest Rush fan in America, so that's been always a very positive thing. But having said that, this talk today is really about me. My experiences, I don't speak for all buyers, I speak from my experiences as a retail wine buyer. I've done some work in restaurants, I've done some work on the wholesale side, obviously, but not only about my experiences, but also in the experiences that I have gained and learned from other buyers in the retail setting. What I have to share to you today are principles, the kind of rules, if you will, lessons that I've learned. And they're lessons that I've heard actually echoed in other aspects of the business. So just so that you know kind of the scope of what we're talking about. I'll be talking about rules. I'm not going to really be going into applications or data mining platforms or programs that actually tell you how to find this 2,000 base of customers and how do you sell to them. But my rules are what I've gained and learned over the last 15, 17 years, okay? I'll speak for about 15 to 20 minutes. And then afterwards, if there's any questions, obviously you have the opportunity to ask at that point, as well as I'll be here after the presentation. So if you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to ask. Okay, so why does it matter that I take somewhat of an activist approach to selling? So first of all, there are a lot of wine brands in the market right now. There are a lot of retailers, there are a lot of salespeople and merchants in the business. If I'm not stepping forward and aggressively going after customers, somebody else will. So this portion of the conversation is really directed to those of you in the room right now who are in the business of selling wine to consumers. Or it could also be taken a step back if you sell wine, period. Because at the wholesale level, God knows, there are a lot of suppliers out there. As Jonathan Newman just mentioned before, there are a lot of wholesalers out there that are really looking to knock on the doors of buyers. So why does it matter? Because there's a lot of people out there. Obviously, it's a kind of an activist approach. So one of the important things is, in one of the research studies that I did with Wine Intelligence at the end of last year, there were essentially two types of customer bases, and as a result, two kinds of products. One kind of customer base really focused on brands, Kendall Jackson, Bogle. Those are the ones that are going to be buying only those brands pretty much for the rest of their lives. However, the SKUs, the products that specifically will make you money and set you apart from your competition, are really some more of those artisanal brands that are exciting and interesting, and is actually much greater opportunity for profit. So in order to do well with those artisanal brands and those niche brands, you really have to know how to sell them, and you have to actually push them. They're not going to sell themselves in many cases. We would go after those artisanal brands, both in my years at the wine library and before. It's those artisanal brands that stood us apart and made people remember us and what we did. Those personally branded brands, I should say, are what gave us the greatest in gross profit, okay? Now, there's a thing that I like to tell all new people who are coming into the business: If you're not selling, you're not giving service. So if a person is coming into your store, or if you're picking up the phone and you're connecting with a customer you haven't spoken to in a while, you need to be selling to them. If you're not selling, you're actually not servicing them. Many people who are new to the business get scared by that concept because they don't want to be imposing on a customer or come on strong or too attacking. But if you're not selling, you're not giving them service, and they actually expect you to sell to them. If you don't, they're going to move on. They're going to go to other stores or other retailers or other restaurants. The other piece that I've learned is get out in front of what is happening in the business. Marketing is shaping public opinion every single day. And as a result, you have to be thinking like a marketer when you're branding businesses. At the Wine Library, one of the things that we kind of learned on very early on is it's 50% wine store, 50% marketing company. And the best retailers in the country right now have that same exact, and have adopted that same exact kind of idea of themselves. So that marketing piece is very, very important. The last piece I'm going to talk about, and then I'll go to the next slide, daily sales. So part of the impetus to me wanting to share my experiences with you today are the dramatic differences that I had started to experience the moment I started working at the Wine Library. At previous stores, we would think in terms of monthly numbers. How are we doing this year so far versus last year, this quarter versus last quarter? The difference at the Wine Library, and this is not shameless self-promotion for the Wine Library, but it is a very good principle that I learned. Every single day, you should be hitting X dollars. Whatever that dollar number is, you should be hitting that number. I don't care how you get to that number, you got to get to it. Gross profit, same concept. So it went from a quarterly yardstick to a daily yardstick. As a result, the months took care of themselves. The quarters took care of themselves. Every single day is what mattered in terms of how you actually sell. So the next series of slides are really somewhat irreverent, and there's a reason for it. But obviously, I'm a visual guy, so I'm going to talk about this from the perspective of images. Be consistent. This is obvious. When you are interacting with consumers, whether it be promotion-driven, or phone call-driven, or email-driven, or what have you, make sure that you are hitting them in somewhat equal intervals. If it's once a day, if it's once every 2 days, if it's once a week, if it's once every 2 weeks, once every month, they need to know they can trust you and rely on you and that you're in this for the long haul. That consistency is what builds an expectation that you're there, and it's what builds an expectation that you're going to come back and keep coming to them with new ideas, new products, new things to get excited about. Okay? So the consistency is a really, really important piece that many, many of us have had to learn the hard way. If you are going to get involved in doing a podcast, if you're going to get involved in doing videos, all of which I've done, and sometimes I've done it well, sometimes I haven't done it as well. And the reason is because of this, but other things as well, but the consistency is really, really important. Okay? Watch your P's. What country is this from? Belgium, very good. So mannequin piece. This is not about place, it's not about promotion, it's about price. The single most important factor that I have found, a sticky factor for consumers to come back to you, is because you offer them a fair/aggressive price in relation to your competition. Everyone here, or most of you know, Wine Searcher, game changer in terms of how the business was being run in the last couple of years. Wine Searcher is used actually a lot more by trade than by consumer, but it allows you to know exactly who your competition is, where they're pricing, where the outlandish pricing is. Know your pricing. Pricing is really, really, really undervalued. There are many retail friends that I have that don't have to worry as much about pricing. They're in a very heavy foot traffic area. They have amazing service. They don't have to worry so much about pricing. You do. Because people have come to me saying, I used to shop at this store, their prices are outlandish, it's insulting. I know how much this costs, I know how much it's priced everywhere else, it matters. So that's the one important message I want to kind of share with you. It really matters. For me, in my experience as a as a salesperson, as a buyer over the last 15, 17 years, it really matters. So I just wanted to share that with you. Next slide, product. So I'm going to take a second to take a drink. Norma Ray. I learned a long time ago that if I'm not standing on tables and literally kicking down the doors of suppliers, wholesalers, wineries, at every opportunity I can, respectfully, being nice, I will not be paid attention to. And I'm talking about me personally. So you have the personal buyer, and then you have the store that you represent, and then you have the city or state or what have you that you represent. Okay, it all comes with expected perceptions of you. But if I wasn't advocating for myself and for what I was looking for at every moment, I wasn't being taken seriously. Suppliers, wholesalers, so much on your plate. I so get it. I was there. I know exactly what you mean. But if I'm not telling you exactly that I'm looking for product and what I'm looking for, I'm doing my customers a disservice. Okay, really important. I found that when I would have a tasting meeting with one of the wineries, and by tasting, I'm talking about essentially they come, they have to take their winery representative there, taste the buyer on the wines. I would get killed if I didn't make a deal at that moment. And what I came to find out was that the wineries that were coming to see me were so thrilled that I actually pushed for some kind of a deal, buying 30 cases of this or the last 7 cases of that. So important to the wineries when they could actually meet with a buyer who actually wanted to really buy and make something happen at that point. Okay? But most of the time, in all honesty, it took me as the buyer to kind of really push that envelope. So stand on a table, make the supplier work for you. The other piece that I learned in the last couple of years in particular is giving the directives or the specs, so to speak, to the wholesalers to let them know, this is what I'm looking for. I'm doing a promotion on Argentinian Malbec, but I want to do like a $7 Malbec. I want to do an Argentinian Malbec that's $40 to $50. Find me something. Find me something with a score. Find me something from wherever. I want to do some Burgundy promotions. Find me a Burgundy that's in Côte de Nuit that has vineyards close to XYZ wineries. Scores are important, as Jonathan mentioned before. It's totally true. So give the specs to your suppliers. Let them know what you're looking for. Always at every opportunity. Next slide. Be bold, get graphic, present well, stand out. Kind of speaks for itself. The reason why I chose the title that I did for this particular presentation wasn't because I was going to give you the blueprint of how do you crush your competition. It's a little aggressive, but I did it on purpose. I want to provoke. I want to bring you out. I want to upset you a little bit sometimes. I want to excite you. I want to impassion you a little bit sometimes. That passion, that enthusiasm, that commitment, that flamboyance, that professional irreverence, if you will, that's really important in the world of the noise that we live in. So again, I'm talking to consumers that buy and get emails from anywhere from 4 to 10 different merchants every single day. Why would I matter? Why would it be different for me? Stand out. Think, and we'll go into the next slide as well. So again, I learned that by saying that I have a Côte de Rhône that's 90 points, that is so good, won't mean anything. But if I said, this is a Côte de Rhône made by a 100-point winemaker that is actually declassified Châteauneuf du Pape, that means something to a number of people. If I say I have a 97-point Côte de Rhône, it's $14.99, means something. It's total to a different population, but the point is, say something that'll provoke, that'll bring it out. Sometimes you'll get it wrong. Sometimes you'll upset people. It's actually okay. I'm still standing. I'm not getting death threats yet. But the reality is, do something to provoke. That's one thing that I've had come back to me over and over again. Know your peeps. This is essentially not about the holidays that just passed up. It's not about sweets or candies or anything like that. But the reality is, as essentially a marketer, as a salesperson, I have to know who my customer base is, individually in buckets, like groups. I have to know what they like. It is a never-ending journey. It is the absolute 100% focus of what I do, okay? And it's what I do because if I can't sell, I can't buy. The best buyers in this business are the best salespeople. The best buyers are the best salespeople. They're the best marketers because they know what their people are gonna buy. And I get it wrong probably 2 to 3 times a week, but I get it right 2 to 3 times a week as well. I ran a Barbera offer 2 days ago. 97-point Barbera, awesome. Wine's phenomenal. I know the wine very well. Phenomenal bottle of wine. 97-point Barbera doesn't mean anything. So I sold like 4 cases. I bet my colleague that I was gonna sell all 15 in an hour. I sold 4. I thought I knew my peeps. I don't. I'm constantly being acquainted with what matters. And it differs by time of year. It differs by product. It differs by scoring magazine. It differs all the time. And it also differs by time frame. So I can sell port in July, and sometimes I get stuck with 30 cases of champagne in December because I just didn't time it right or the product mix wasn't correct. So constantly engaging with your customer base, really, really, really important. It'll tell you kind of essentially what you can buy and how much you can take a risk on. One of the things, and I might get in trouble for this, but so be it. One of the things that has been really powerful for me, so just by a show of hands, how many people in here are buyers either in retail or restaurant? Just raise your hand. So everyone here is an importer. Great. So you're gonna love this. So the reality is I option a lot of what I do promotions on. Be flexible with your buyers. Be flexible because it allows them to run promotions and offers to their customer base that they otherwise would not be able to do. Meaning, I'll say, hold these 10 cases until Friday. I'm gonna run an offer, let me know, I'm gonna round back with you on Friday to actually give you my final number. So that flexibility has been hugely important, especially in times like where you have a need to continue to sell, but you can't take on a 10-case nut. You can't take it on. So the flexibility piece, and just is my message out to those of you who are in that kind of position. Okay. I learned a long time ago from a very smart man who knew nothing about wine, but knew a lot about business, is you can put lipstick on a pig, but at the end of the day, a pig is still a pig. And by that I mean, know the product that you're selling and that it has meaning, significance to the people you're selling it to. So the 97-point Barbera, thank God, I know that wine, I'm gonna sell it through myself personally, but that's a tough product. That's a tough wine to sell. Know exactly what you're actually investing in and know that if it's a cheap magnum of something and you know the wine is really not that good, but it has kind of specs that could fit into the equation, second guess yourself. If it's about the quality not being there, if it's about it itself not having brand equity in the market or to the people that you're selling it to, know the product that you're selling to. The way, honestly, that I've had most success is, and this is from my wholesale days, and it's like selling 101, match the product to your people. Only buy what you can sell. Sounds like, yeah, duh, no kidding. But the reality is only buy what you can sell. And if you don't know how much you can sell, you better hedge your bets and be careful with that. But the important thing is really know the products that are rock stars. For those of you in the room, Brunello has been huge, Cali Cab has been huge, Chard, etc. We know all the ringers. We also know who the dogs are. It's tough. The wines, I'm not speaking about the quality of the wines, I'm speaking about the categories, a tough sell in some cases. So just be leery as you're stepping into those arenas of what you want to sell, okay? New angles, new perspectives, and new opportunities. This kind of speaks for itself. I am constantly learning and relearning how to do my job. Every week, every month, I'm relearning a different way to spin something or present something or to sell something to a new or existing client group, whether it be talking about the vintage specifics, whether it be talking about the organic nature of the wine, whether it be talking about who the winemaker is, where the vineyards are located. And what's directing or driving that for me is constant engagement with customers all the way through. And it's people who are buying $10 bottles of wine and people who are buying $200 bottles of wine. Constant engagement all the way through. So those angles are really important to continue to explore. Scores do matter, but maybe they don't. sometimes the vintage will trump the score. Sometimes the reviewer will trump the score. So just as you're going through, really think through new angles. Talk to your colleagues. Look and read social media, follow what's hot, stay on top of that stuff. When I mentioned earlier about getting out in front of some of the marketing, so for example, timing, really important. Timing is huge. New York Times comes out with a top 4 list or a top 12 list of their favorite Barberas, for example. I want number 1. I want number 1 or the top value. The other ones, quite frankly, won't sell for me, but I want number 1. But you have to come out with that in 12 hours or 24 hours that the article came out with. Even better, if you can get the advanced copy, do it before the article even hits. Because 36, 48 hours later, it won't matter. So angles, perspectives, timing, and the more you keep trying, you're gonna fail a lot, and that's cool. You'll fail a lot. But the more you keep trying and the more you keep pushing for different ways of selling something, experiment, try things, try new things. It's the fun part of this job and what we do. The one thing that I will say that I haven't spoken to is I've spoken a lot about things that I've learned, lessons learned, and there's a lot more, obviously. And I'm sure there are a lot of lessons that you all have that you would love to share with me, which is great. But one of the biggest things that I learned, in particular in the last 5-6 years, post-2008, 2009, when the economy collapsed, is that data, and there's one thing I did not talk about today, because I honestly don't have the proprietary information or the right to be able to speak to the proprietary programs that are being used out there, but there are tons of them. Data drives the engine. So find a program or an application that collects the names of the people that you sell to and what they buy, and then use that every single day, because that will create your hit list for the day. It'll associate people with the products that you're trying to bring in. And it'll associate it by price point. You want to drive it by product category, flavor type. But it's really the data driving is what changed everything of how I know what I know today. After 2008, once that recession hit, I had to figure out my job all over again. And as a result, I had to learn how to do it better. And the way I did it was via data. So using data applications and programs to really break down, these are my lists of my best customers, by how much they spend, by how often they're buying, by what they're buying. Those are really, really important tools that if you don't have, in whatever capacity of the business that you're in, but if you're selling, you should be advancing your data collection techniques every week and every month, because it'll cut your time, it'll be efficient for you, effective, and it's the most important thing that I use every single day to match product with customers and to turn it fast. And it keeps you focused, and it keeps you structured, it keeps you disciplined to stay in touch with your customers and stay engaged all throughout. There are a lot of things that are happening in this business today. We've already heard a lot of it already, direct to consumer, online sales. But the thing that is the most important thing is that you have relationships that people are expecting you to uphold and to have with them. Use those relationships, build them, grow them, foster them, and that is really, at the end of the day, that relationship is what they're going to rely on to make a decision as to whether to buy something from you or not. So those relationships are huge. So that concludes the kind of major life lessons that I've had in my role in this business. So if you'd like, I could certainly turn it over to questions and answers, or questions. I hope I can get you the answers. But thank you very, very, very much. I really appreciate your time. Yes, sir.
You mentioned at the end data management systems. Did you build them custom on a custom basis, or did you buy a package?
It's an arena that unfortunately I am not in, but what I understand is that most companies, most wine retailers are buying starter kits, so to speak, and then building it and customizing it as they go. And they have an IT team or an IT person that specifically knows how to do that kind of thing. So in the wine libraries, I actually don't have that information, but there are plenty of them out there that you can buy as a kit, as a starter package, and then build it and customize it to your database as you go.
How did you do it?
It was something, it already existed when I got into the store, so I don't really have that information. But sorry, thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you talked about scoring publications.
Yes.
What scoring publications count and which ones don't?
Awesome question. So the question is, what scoring publications count, which ones don't? Scores matter, period. And they matter, I'm going to answer that in two ways. In my experience, they matter, period, because it stops a person from doing what they're doing in their everyday life and seeing a 90, 92, 94, 97, whatever. It stops them in their tracks and makes them actually open your email or take your phone call or what have you. Or if you're in the middle of a conversation at a store, it stops. Generally speaking, and this is a moving target a little bit, but the ones that are constant, Wine Spectator, the Wine Advocate, the ones that are very interesting to me, Decanter, they became relevant the second in this country, in my experience. Decanter became relevant the second they moved to a 100-point scale. Phenomenal magazine, some of the best writing, in my opinion, in the business. But they became relevant to me as a buyer and to consumers the second they went to the 100-point scale. Wine Enthusiast is there. Wine and Spirits is there. Antonio Galloni is phenomenal. Brilliant mind, great writer and great crew, very legitimate, but not, in my experience, taken with the same kind of impact as the Wine Spectator or Wine Advocate. Despite what many people will say, the Wine Spectator's top 100 list is still hugely impactful for product movement, hugely. Wine Advocate, the second that release comes out every 3 months, people are all over that. Okay, so those are big deals. Social media is taking on more and more impact, but specifically Seller Tracker is a big deal. Vivino is becoming more significant. It's being talked about. If I go out there and say that the median Seller Tracker score is 92.1, it's not going to have the same impact as Wine Enthusiast giving it a 97. It's the scores. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality of what I'm experiencing so far. There is conversation about whether scores continue to matter. Yes, there is a portion of the population that is not as interested in that, and there's a portion of the population that is really being directed by brand marketing. Apothic Red being the perfect example. Younger set are really involved in kind of attracted to that brand marketing, is actually still having tremendous impact. And obviously, wine consultants on the floor are going to have a big impact on customers walking into a store, friends and family. But I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. One more question?
Yes, miss. Yes.
I have a question about wine clubs.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you. My question is about wine clubs. I haven't heard anyone mention that concept yet. I don't think that's exactly your model, but can you comment? I've noticed there are more and more of them out there, and they seem to be a good way to introduce buyers to wines that they wouldn't normally pick off a shelf in the store.
True. So I operate in a brick and mortar scenario and in a model where we have an online business that's essentially transparent and linked one-on-one with the brick and mortar store. So we aren't a wine club personally, but in my experience with wine clubs, it is definitely a great vehicle, not a good, but a great vehicle for new consumers who have an above average interest and excitement about wine to get wine, because of the obvious social media, online, mobile devices. It makes it very quick and very easy. My fear, and because I've experienced this firsthand, a lot of the wines that are distributed via wine clubs are not necessarily of good quality, and it's selling more on image which is a big deal now. Image and brand recognition as an image-based kind of image driver is a big part of what the wine clubs, like the successful wine clubs, are actually are using to move product. My concern is that the quality of the products is not as good as what you would get from an old school or a trusted wine store or even an online wine store type of thing. But as a vehicle to get consumers getting wine, it is definitely a very viable option. The other piece is as this shipping thing continues to untangle from state to state to state, because it's, as we know, shipping is very difficult from state to state to state, and as the winery direct-to-consumer movement strengthens and builds, that wine club model, I think, has tremendous impact. So for example, wine club for a reputable winery, huge. Like it's almost a no-brainer. Like any winery should have its own wine club where they're doing direct-to-consumer to as many states as they could physically do. And to figure out, if you can't ship to a state, figure out a way to get it to those people because they'll spread the word like viral.
Okay, thanks.
Good. Thanks, Steve. Thank you so much.